So let's begin.
Oh, are you recording, John?
Yes.
Excellent.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the course, The Path of Awakening, where it's based on the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma by Chogyam-trungpa Rinpoche. This is a digest of 13 years worth of talks that Trungpa Rinpoche gave to usually between about 150 and 250 students with whom he went away for 3 months for intensive periods of sitting practice and lecture. He lectured quite a bit, usually about half the time when the group wasn't sitting all day. And the other half of the time, everybody would be sitting all day, alternate periods of sitting and walking meditation. In the study periods, there would be sitting as well, but then there would be classes. Every evening, Trungpa Rinpoche would speak, and during the day, there would be classes by various ones of his students. And this happened for 13 years. And these talks that he gave were digested and edited into the 3 volumes of the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma, which is actually a play on Trungpa Rinpoche's name because his refuge name is Ocean of Dharma. Chögyam is an abbreviation of Chogyam-trungpa, which means Ocean of Dharma. And this is the profound treasury thereof. I'd like to announce that we're going to have refuge vows. These are vows by which you become a Buddhist, as it were. Although it's really not, you're not joining a club. There is no Buddhist club. It's more that you're making a commitment to work on yourself, your mind, your neurosis and your sanity, using these tools, kind of digging one deep hole instead of many shallow. And to that end, there are going to be probably 4 classes that will be all about what it means to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then we will have a ceremony online, and each person will take refuge and receive a refuge name. This is a name in Tibetan, translated into English as well. And you'll get a certificate, kind of a reward. And so we'll do that. Also, by request, this fall, we're going to have a workshop on the sadhana of Mahamudra, and there'll be more said about that later. Once you have done a workshop, it might be a weekend, 2 days, about 8 hours a day of practice and study online, or it might be spread out over a number of weeks, 1 day a week. We'll figure that out. And after that, you can own the sadhana of Mahamudra and have it in your home. So that's enough, I think, for announcements. And now, Barry is going to start out. We had chapters, what was it, chapter 4 this week.
Yes, chapter 4.
It's chapter 4. And Barry's going to start out, and then I'll conclude. Okay.
Well, okay, and welcome, and let's start with a bow, if you'd like to join me. It helped to kind of wake us up. So, opening to the true Dharma is the heading of this reading. Beginning with what is the word Dharma? What does it mean? And Dharma has many meanings in various contexts and traditions, and most of these meanings are what you can think of as ordinary sort of day-to-day Dharma, the Dharma of this class or of an experience, or the Dharma of this is that, like the Dharma of fire is heat, for instance. I'm not going to really go into those. Instead, I'm going to look at the not so ordinary meaning of Dharma, Sadharma, which is taking the Tibetan word satya and prepending it to Dharma, which means the truth, true Dharma, or Dharma truth. And it's synonymous with the Buddha Dharma. It's, in a nutshell, it's the teachings of the Buddha. In the reading, he says, the Buddha Dharma is that which subjugates or tames the mind. It is the purpose of the teachings of the Buddha to tame the mind. Okay. This is actually another way of saying that it is that which leads to the end of suffering. Now, I had some difficulty preparing for this class, actually. First couple, 3 pages of the reading really go into all the different meanings of Dharma, and I didn't see that there was really much that I could bring to that or add to that. But I did find some implications in there that I think are worth going into and looking at. For one thing, an important aspect of this path that we have embarked on is that it is non-theistic.
Ready,
So,
honey?
Someone's unmuted.
I'm going to mute all, Barry, and then you can unmute yourself again.
Got it. Okay. It was Milarepa again, man. Hi, Peter. So anyway, so the path is non-theistic. The implication of that is that we are not being asked to believe in anything. Instead, we're given guidance in ways to go about finding the truth within ourselves. So what's also implied here then is that these teachings should be approached with some care and precision. On one hand, we approach these teachings with an open mind and open ears, but they are regarded as guidance, not absolute truth. So instead, our approach is finding things in these teachings that have a deeper, more genuine, intrinsic resonance. We hear and read teachings, contemplate them, meditate, and then a deeper intuitive understanding is reached. So it is up to each of us to put 2 and 2 together, you could say. Another thing is that the nature of the path is transformational. I mean, I guess you could pursue these teachings and practice strictly out of intellectual curiosity. You may want to educate yourself about this just so you can write a paper or something, or which is okay. But the real point of the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma that we're talking about here, is to transform our minds, to tame our minds, and to come to a different experience of ourself and the world around us, everything, to achieve enlightened mind. A difficulty that's encountered sometimes is having an expectation of what can be achieved, imagining some kind of enlightenment experience. But where we're going is not something that any of us can really imagine until we get there. If any of us could truly imagine it, we would already be enlightened. So just know that as we continue, our experience will change, and it will continue to change. Our experience of everything. Another thing is that, and I guess this is implied here, is that the Dharma is best approached as a spiritual journey. Now, I think it's safe to say that none of us here are already fully enlightened. So our ego is going to play a role here in how we engage in these teachings. And this manifests in different ways. You'll probably encounter things here that have an implication that is somehow threatening or makes you uncomfortable. That's a good sign. After all, we've all spent all of our lives up till now cruising along, enjoying the entertainment of samsara, of the churning of our habitual patterns of thought. And now we're working on changing that. And this is where ego kicks in. So if you find yourself thinking, I knew that, it's a good clue that your ego is calling the shots. Now, sometimes we encounter things that just flat out disagree with, and that could be good. It gives us something to contemplate, something to chew on. It just doesn't make any sense, but there's something in there. Maybe it will never make sense, but more often, at some point, frequently during meditation or contemplation, something will connect to your experience. So the point is, just do it. Hear the teachings, read them, contemplate them, and meditate. And see your expectations as just expectations, and don't get hung up on them. So, those are the points I really wanted to cover here. I guess I could also say that if we find ourselves just agreeing with everything we're reading and hearing in these teachings, nodding our head, and yep, that's right, then we're not learning anything. These teachings are taking us someplace new. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, keep an open mind, practice, 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 and stick with it. So we can have some discussion, or if anyone has questions.
I wanted to ask about in the readings how it breaks down the Dharma into the discipline, meditation, and knowledge. And I guess I'm wondering what you think about how discipline stands alone, or is it more something that should apply to the meditation and the knowledge?
Actually, you're perfectly introducing what John's going to talk about.
Okay.
So I will leave that to him. But if anyone else has any questions or comments about what we've covered so far. Okay.
All right, everyone. Just a couple of comments more on the term Dharma. Obviously, I think everyone knows the Dharma refers to, in one of its meanings, and its most appropriate meaning here is that it refers to the Buddhist teachings. In fact, if we take refuge, we're going to take refuge in the Buddha as an example of a person who achieved enlightenment, who worked with his own neurosis and achieved sanity. And the Dharma is the teachings that he gave and by which many other people over the centuries have followed a similar path. And then the Sangha, the three jewels, these are called. The Sangha is the community of fellow practitioners with whom we walk together alone, each one of us alone, but we do that together. So the Dharma is the Buddhist teachings above all. They say that the fundamental meaning of the Dharma is passionlessness. And what that refers to is that confusion, suffering, which motivates us all to come to this path, to try and deal with that, is fundamentally wanting things to be different than they are. We, in our thoughts, which are always about the past and the future, we constantly wish that things were different, had been different, would be different in the future. And that is what is defined as being passion. Passion here means wishing things were otherwise. And the Dharma is passionlessness. It teaches us how to let go of that kind of suffering, which inheres in thought, and instead appreciate our lives as they unfold in the only time we ever really have, which is this present moment. The past and the future only exist in our thoughts, in our dreams. The present is what is real. And the practice of meditation and all of the Buddhist teachings are aimed at bringing us back into and understanding what this present moment is. And this is what the Dharma is aimed at. Now, the true Dharma, the Sadharma, that word Sadharma is a combination of the word Satya, which means truth, and Dharma. So it's the true Dharma, the Dharma of truth, is often divided into three categories. Sila, which is usually translated as discipline. Samadhi, which is translated usually as meditative absorption. And prajna, which is translated simply as many ways, but perhaps a simple translation would be intelligence. Starting with the first, sila, discipline. A simple meaning for this is that it refers to the rules of conduct. And these rules have been codified over the centuries for monks, for nuns, for aspirants to being a monk or nun, and for lay people. If you go do a meditation program at a center, especially a center that's connected with the Shambhala Buddhism or the Vajrayana Buddhism, Vajradhatu Buddhism that we come from, if you do a meditation program every day, you'll start out by taking 5 vows. And those vows are not to kill, not to steal, not to drink intoxicating alcohol or take drugs, not to have improper sex, and not to be envious. And these 5 vows, if you feel like you're going to break one, each day you take them, feel like you're going to break one, you don't take it that day. And if you have taken it and you break it, then you have to go and confess to your meditation instructor. This is the basic format of a meditation program. And so that's the first meaning of sila. But really the broader meaning of sila has to do with the import and the meaning of the whole path and the teachings all together, which are that we are beginning to shift our loyalty from these anxious but entertaining thoughts, which are ego's domain, into awareness in the present moment. Every time we come present, that sense of I, which we're referring to as ego here, evaporates. It can't live in the present moment. Every time we say I, we have left our awareness of the present moment and gone off into thought of one kind or another, subtle or profound. It could be powerful thoughts, it could be very weak thoughts, but these little thoughts of I want, I wish, I hope, I fear, I plan to, all are about the future and the past. Even thoughts about the past are really about the future. There was a famous psychoanalyst named Fritz Perls, who invented Gestalt therapy, who said all thoughts about the past are really about the future. Because we consider the past and we think about what was good in it and what was bad in it in terms of what we hope our future will be. So when we practice meditation, when we practice the true Dharma, we're giving up those thoughts of the past and the future and coming back into the present, which is the fundamental meaning of sila. Sila is the commitment that we are making to ourselves to come back. And it's the discipline that we are applying to ourselves increasingly. It's amazing how hard it is to stay in the present because our thoughts take us away so rapidly. And we find ourselves walking down the street, heading towards some store, lost in thought, and walking right by it. We spend our days really lost in thought, lost in contemplation. And it's amazing how much we might miss. The second of the three principles of the Dharma is samadhi. There are many words for meditation in Sanskrit and Tibetan. Samadhi happens to be a Sanskrit word. In fact, all the terms that we're looking at here are Sanskrit. They've all been translated into Tibetan. Dharma in Tibetan is Chö. In Chinese, it's Fa. It's been translated into every language in the world. Samadhi is one of the words for meditation. Dhyana is another. Trying to think. Sati is a word that is very close to meditation. It means remembrance, coming back, remembering to come back into the present. But samadhi refers to absorption. In its lower level, it refers to absorptions almost like trance states, that one could become fixed on an object of meditation. It might be anything. It could be a statue that's sitting in front of you, and you focus your awareness on it one pointedly, and you can actually go into trance states. It might be a mantra. Hindu meditation lends itself very much to this. Hindu meditation is akin to the Buddhist practice of shamatha, one-pointed focus on an object. And if one achieves the heights of this practice, one can actually go into trance states which are very, very pleasurable. In Buddhism, they talk a lot about what are called the three worlds. You'll see references to the three worlds in these writings. The three worlds are these. These are all neurotic, mental realms. The first of the three worlds is the world of desire. It's called the Kama, as in Kama Sutra. Kama means desire. Dhatu. Dhatu in this sense means world or space. And the Kamadhatu is where we all live, you and I, assuming, if I may, presumptuously maybe, that we're all unenlightened. There may be some enlightened people here listening. And so we live in the Kamadhatu, and the Kamadhatu is divided into six sub-realms. They're called loka, as in locus, loci. And the loka are the God realm, the jealous God realm, the human realm, the animal realm, the realm of the hungry ghosts. Those are beings that are constantly hungry, suffer from hunger, feeling of insufficiency. And finally, the lowest of the six realms is the hell realm, which is the realm of hatred. People who are utterly freaked out and suffering from fear and hatred. The God realm is the realm of pleasure and bliss. All of them are samsaric, and all of them are temporary. So you might receive a compliment or a gift of some sort, and you feel great pleasure, and you experience the bliss of the God realm momentarily, but it passes, unfortunately. Now, the other two realms, other two worlds, as it were, are the world of pure form and the formless world. And these are purely mental states that are achieved through practicing intense concentration on an object. And you can, as you approach these different states of concentration, they're called dhyanas. These are the realms of the dhyanas. In Pali, if you're familiar with that, they're called the jhanas. And there are different ones of them. There are 4 in the realm of the formless gods, because these are God realms. They're very, very pleasurable, which makes them why they're called God realms. And then the realm of the formless gods has 4 of these dhyanas, or meditations. For instance, in the formless world, the world of the formless gods of formlessness, the meditations are, first you meditate on pure consciousness. Then you meditate above that, a more subtle meditation is on space. And above that, you meditate on not this and not that. And above that, the highest of these is the meditation on not this and not that. Gives you an idea. So the point of samadhi is that you are absorbed. And you can be absorbed in these, but the real meaning of samadhi, especially for us, is on the path, is to be absorbed in the present moment, to be completely 100% clear here in the present, not being lost in dreams of one kind or another. Egocentric dreams, dreams about me. All dreams are always about me. They're about I. I am the hero or the heroine of these dreams. And when we are having these dreams, we are not present. And the ultimate meaning of samadhi here, in terms of the Dharma, is to be completely absorbed in the present. When one achieves the highest levels of meditation. And they do get higher and higher. Now, what does it mean to get higher and higher in levels of meditation? And this brings us to the third category of the Dharma, which is prajna. Prajna is a Sanskrit word which literally means intense or superior knowing. She is the root of the word to know in Sanskrit, and she is an intensifier, and jñā is the root of the word to know. I'm sorry, pra. I'm mixing up Tibetan and Sanskrit here. Pra is the intensifier, and jñā is the root of the word to know. So it's intense knowing, pra jñā. In Tibetan, it's sherab, and she is the Tibetan for to know, and rup is the intensifier. So it's intense or superior knowing, prajna, sherab. And it has a number of meanings or levels. At one level, it could be just cleverness. You can have a lot of prajna, and it means that you're clever at solving mathematical problems or doing automobile repair or just clever at manipulating situations. But really, in terms of the Dharma, prajna has to do with seeing the world as it truly is. And that only can happen through meditation, samadhi, when one comes back into the present moment and sees the world stripped of thought, of hope and fear, of the machinations of ego. Ego's always got an agenda. It wants things to be other than they currently are. And it's thinking about that. And it's seeing this present situation in terms of how can I change this and make it better for me, for the world, for me. Even if you're an idealist and you want to make things better for the world, there's a huge amount of me in that. Then people will admire me. Then I'll be a good person. Then I will get to enjoy this better world. There's really no end to it. So prajna is seeing this world as it truly is, stripped. Now, stripped of thought, preconception, judgments of all kinds. And when one sees it as it truly is, then they say that you're able to do things, be much more effective at helping people. Helping people do what? Helping people how? Helping people anyway, but especially helping people to become sane, to achieve the sanity that you hopefully have achieved by practicing samadhi, by having this loyalty, the sila, to this present moment, and by seeing things as they truly are. Now, when one does that, when one keeps coming back into the present, when one develops one's meditation, one's samadhi, it gets deeper and deeper. And one shifts one's orientation from wanting things to be different to appreciating the world as it arises in the present moment. And then one begins to see the world in a very different way. You see, thought, ego, is constantly dividing the world, as we discussed in that, I think it was the second chapter of the book, Frozen Space of Ego. It's constantly dividing the world into I and other. And I and other, to these things we attribute existence over time and independence. Things that they exist independently. And these things just aren't true. Everything is arising in interdependence with everything else. Everything in the present moment is shifting all the time. We turn our heads and the view is changing. It's like a 3D movie, constantly shifting and changing. And so we begin to step out of the world of I and other, which is full of ego and its machinations, and into this world of vivid, constant change, in which everything is arising and passing away in the moment and communicating what it is very vividly, that we don't even notice when we're so lost in dreams. We don't notice the redness of the apple. We don't notice the softness of the breeze because we're lost in thought, wishing things were otherwise. And so prajna has this quality of changing the way in which we see and understand who we are and what the world is. That change is described in the Buddhist path. And there are various levels. So the first thing that happens as we begin to develop our meditation practice is that we begin to understand that I is just an idea. This is called developing the one-fold egolessness. Ultimately, you get twofold. But right now, at the very beginning level of the path, as we study the doctrine, we begin to understand that I is just a fiction, a mental creation, a story that we tell from time to time, often a lot of the time, and that we can let that go. That's on the intellectual level of understanding egolessness. And as I said in a couple of classes ago, the experiential level of understanding egolessness is that we come present, 100% present into this present moment. And every time we do that, the dreams of I, those stories, those melodramas, they're like soap operas, they evaporate. That's at the first level of the path. The Mahayana level, which we'll get to in volume 2 of the Profound Treasury, is where not only does I dissolve, but so does other. And then it's like we begin to realize we can do it now, that all of this is a constant display that is changing every moment and which has no true substance. As soon as something arises like this gesture, it's gone. These words come out of my mouth and they're gone. Now I direct you to the feeling of your bottom on the cushion. It's there for a moment, and then your attention shifts and that's gone. There might be a taste or a smell that comes up because you're drinking some tea like I am here, and you momentarily taste that, and then it's gone. It's all utterly temporary as it arises and passes in the present moment. And the more you're here, present, the more vivid these arisings and passings are, and the more they tell you what they are. And this is at first, the level of shunyata. Maybe you've heard that term. Shunyata means voidness, emptiness. Empty of what? Empty of I and other. They don't exist. They were fictions altogether from get-go. And so one moves into a new world, a world of the emptiness of I and other at the Mahayana stage of the path. And then beyond that, one moves into the Vajrayana, where not only do we understand that I and other don't exist, which really means the end of suffering, by the way. Suffering only exists between I and other. We constantly want to manipulate others to benefit I. And once that is pierced, that belief is shattered, the true entrance into the absence of suffering takes place at the middle level of the path. But beyond that, that absence of I and other reveals the extraordinary beauty and vividness of this world, and that's what the Vajrayana is all about. It's about beginning to play with the phenomenal world as it arises and passes in this present moment. Becoming a real yogi, a siddha, they're called, those people who play with the world. Siddha means power holder, because they are playing endlessly with the phenomenal world as it arises and passes. And this is the true meaning of the Dharma. Sila, commitment to the present moment. Samadhi, absorption in the present moment. And prajna, true appreciation and understanding of this world as it arises and passes away in the present moment. So just a few more parts of this. Rinpoche must have been just covering a lot of little categories. The Dharma is good in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. It's good in the beginning. It produces great joy. We begin to understand egolessness and escape from suffering, escape into reality, which is this present moment, awareness, giving up the dreams. It's good in the middle because it becomes very effortless. It becomes smooth. You just relax into this. As we do in meditation, we can relax into awareness. And then he says it's good in the end. Well, there is no end. It just goes on and on forever. There's no end. Isn't that interesting? He talks about profundity and vastness. The profundity really has to do usually when we're talking, he doesn't say this in this section, but profundity has to do with understanding who you are and what the world is and what your relationship is with it. And that's very profound, as we've just discussed. The discovery of the non-existence of I and the non-existence of other. And the vastness has to do with the appreciation of this extraordinary display that's arising around us all the time, arising and passing until it isn't. He gives the 10 definitions of Dharma, and I'm really not going to go through them. Only the 10th is really the Buddhist Dharma. The 5 songs of Dharma, it's like thunder because it just shatters your preconceptions, wakes you up. It's like a flute because it's so soothing. It's so gentle, it's beautiful, it's musical, and it is soothing. That's the 3rd one. And it clarifies everything, and it's never contradictory. The Dharma is never contradictory. It always is internally self-consistent. So it's a really beautiful path, very profound, extraordinarily rich, extraordinarily detailed. We could never study all the different aspects of the teaching. So many people in the last 2,600 years have found different aspects to write about, leave behind in teachings. But all of the teachings make the same point. They point us to the same place, which is egolessness and living our lives as they unfold richly with complete awareness in this present moment. And in doing so, we forget and we lose track more and more of I. And in doing so, we achieve peace, clarity of mind, wisdom. So I'm going to stop and we could have a discussion. Just give me a second. I'm going to change the way we're recording this, I hope. So, who would like to speak? Complaints? We're taking complaints, questions, comments, whatever you like.
I have a question.
Okay, Rika.
I have a bit of confusion around Dharma is particular religious beliefs. I don't understand that.
It's not beliefs. Buddhism doesn't like beliefs. It eschews, recommends against beliefs of all kinds. There was a great Buddhist in the 2nd century named Nagarjuna, and he was sometimes called the second Buddha. He a school of Buddhism called Madhyamaka, which we will get to, which is all about shunyata, by the way. And one of his most famous works is called The Root Verses on the Middle Way. And he wrote these verses. And what the verses are arguments against any belief. So in these verses, I'll just amuse you with one. I hope. I hope I'll amuse you, or either that bore you to death. But for instance, the opponent, the Tirtaka, these are all debates. And the Tirtaka, that means the opponent, says, you must admit there is cause and effect. Buddhist Nagarjuna says, and you must admit that if there is a cause and effect, the cause comes either before, simultaneously with, or after the effect. There's no 4th possibility. It has to be either before, at the same time as, or after. Tirtaka says, granted. Well, then Nagarjuna says, and if the cause comes before the effect, it can't produce it because it has no contact with the effect. If it comes any part of it at the same time as the effect, then how can you distinguish that part from the effect? Because they're both happening at the same time. They're simultaneous. The part that comes before doesn't have any contact with it. The part that has contact with it happens at the same time, which produces which. And if it comes after the effect, well, that's absurd. You can't have a cause coming after the effect. And so he demolishes it. The whole book is demolishing beliefs, belief in cause and effect, and lots of others. And then Nagarjuna says, hold to no beliefs. They're all false. They're just mental constructs, including that one. Don't hold to the belief in no beliefs either. So I'll give you the Trungpa Rinpoche version of this. When I first met him in 1970 at Tail of the Tiger, a crew, I know some of you have heard this story, I love this story. A crew came down from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation to conduct a video, an interview of him. And they were a couple of hippies, we all were. They had bell-bottom pants and long hair. One guy has a shoulder-mounted camera, and he's got it focused on Trungpa Rinpoche, and they're standing, everybody's standing outside on the lawn. And this other fellow has a tape deck hanging on a strap from his shoulder and a microphone in his hand. And he puts the microphone in front of Rinpoche and he says, Rinpoche, as a Buddhist, what do you believe in? And Rinpoche says, shocked me at the time, I didn't know better. As a Buddhist, I don't believe in anything. There you have it about beliefs. The Dharma is not about beliefs. It's about, as a great Buddhist scholar named Herbert Gunther, he was German, and he was very early on this a lot. He said that Buddhists regard words not as written in stone, like, beliefs, but simply as useful ways to take things. Just useful ways to take things. And that's true of all the Buddhist teachings. And by the way, the Buddha, they say that he always gave Buddhist teachings that were appropriate to his audience. And the way they say that is using religious language. The Buddha spoke in 84,000 tongues, 84,000 languages. It's hyperbole, right? Well, he said whatever was useful to awaken, to wake up his audience. He taught egolessness to most people. There was one group of people for whom it was useful for him to teach that I actually exists. And he called it the Pudgala. Pudgala is a Sanskrit word that means self. And these were called the Pudgala Vadans. Vadans means the ones who hold to the doctrine of the Pudgala. There was actually a small sect of Indian Buddhists who were called Pudgala Vadans. He said whatever it took, because words are only useful to particular people at a particular time and place.
I think
So words
Mark
are no
has,
belief, including that one.
Mark has a electronic hand up.
Okay.
Hi, John. Nice. Thank you so much for this today. It's really great. I just was asking a question. If I and other doesn't exist, who is it that experienced the moment while meditating, the perfect and luminous moment?
It's itself. They call it, in the text, they call it, in Tibetan, I don't know what the Sanskrit is for that actually. The Tibetan is rung rik, and rung means self and rik means knowing. And this whole space that we are in is one with knowingness. It's like it's pervaded. It's the air, the objects around you, the sounds, everything is lit by knowingness. Now, there was a school that took this to an extreme, this idea, and they were called the mind-only school, Chittamatra. And they held to the fact that all of this, it actually exists as mind. Later, that was demolished. Well, a lot of followers, that idea. But the idea still persists that all of this is lit with knowingness. There's no knower. You can't find the knower. If you do, it's just a fiction, a momentary arising that passes away and just disappears into space.
Are we possibly part of the moment?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no we, really. I mean, it's just,
Well,
Now it's you, now it's me, I'm looking at me, now it's Tony, she's sitting there, I can see her in the picture. It's like it's all flexing, constant arising and passing.
Thank you.
This is the theory. This is the Thank you for a great question, man.
Ed,
Ed Papantonio?
Yes, hi.
Holy, hi.
Unmute myself. Again, thank you very much for this. I'm getting back to Nagarjuna and the cause and effect. How about karma and the karma that we carry with us? And isn't it said, excuse me, that our karma, not in a predetermined sense, but in a, if you will, in a causal sense, brings us to the present moment, and because of that, we behave in certain ways.
Great question. Thank you. Karma is part of neurotic, unenlightened mind.
Oh,
There's nothing in karma that is enlightened. And in fact, in enlightened mind, there is no karma. The Buddha was karma free. Well, he had residual karma. He wasn't creating any more because his mind was enlightened. But he had been born, he was in a physical body that had to die. And that was the playing out of his past karma from when he was unenlightened and achieved birth. And that has a forward momentum. Now, what karma is fundamentally is a story that we believe in. It's a story about I. And this story has a momentum, a forward direction. All stories do. All stories are about, they either have up endings or down endings. When you get what you want, it's called an up ending. And when you don't get it, you get what you don't want, that's a down ending. Right? And this is what karma is we are living these stories in our mind. These stories are habitual. They are stored in the Buddhist equivalent of what Freud called the unconscious. Buddhism developed the same notion of the unconscious 14 or 15 centuries before Freud and called it the storehouse. And what the storehouse is where all your memories are lie dormant. It's the eighth consciousness. We'll come to these 8 consciousnesses. And the way it works is kind of like this. This is karma, how karma happens. I made up this story years ago, and forgive me if you've heard it, but you can do it lots of ways. I just like this one. So a woman, a mother, is walking down the street, let's say, with her child, her toddler. And the child is maybe, 2, 3 years old or whatever. She's busy window shopping. And she doesn't notice that the child sees a dog in the street, and the child approaches the dog. The dog bites the child. It's a mean dog. It's a traumatic thing. The child screams, the mother sees what's going on, she goes over, she rescues the child. The child's been traumatized, right? The memory of that incident is stored in the child's storehouse consciousness, call it the unconscious. It's stored back there. Months later, the child isn't thinking about dogs. That memory is there. It's what is called a seed, bija, in Sanskrit. It's stored as a seed. The seed has potential. Now the child's walking down the street with the mother again, sees another dog in the distance. Immediately that seed comes to life. He remembers, that child, she remembers that incident and is immediately afraid of that child, of that dog, excuse me. So the mother sees what's going on, looks at the dog, goes over, talks to the owner, finds out this is a friendly dog, brokers a meeting between the child and the dog. Now the child experiences a dog that is friendly. The dog licks its face, jumps up, wags its tail, and the child is delighted and its fear is overcome. This now plants a new seed in that child's storehouse, a seed of a memory of friendly dogs. The third time that child meets a dog, it will experience both. It will remember both. Both seeds will come to life. Maybe one more powerfully than the other, who knows? It just depends on the individual. This is the working of karma. We contain all these seeds stored in our alaya. They had come to life. They can be triggered by events in our daily life. Say you had an angry parent and you're walking down the street and you see someone who physically reminds you of that parent. Suddenly the feelings that you had toward that parent come up, and you experience them. The other way that these things come to life is simply the alaya kicks them out. So for instance, at night when you're dreaming, those dreams are kicked out of your alaya and they're the product of your past experience. This is karma. This is the working of karma.
But an enlightened person loses karma?
They stop making it
You stop making it.
because they are completely in the present. And they're not storing these memories in the alaya. And when those memories come to life, by the way, those karmic patterns, the instruction for each one of us is to bring them to awareness. This is why when we meditate, it's so useful. You see, you have these thoughts, you have a dream. It's being kicked out by your alaya, the dream when you meditate. And then something happens. I say, see your thoughts, or you just do it. And you see that thought. And if you don't judge it, do not judge it. You just see it. And then it evaporates, because that's what thoughts do, just like these words. And you come back into awareness. Every time you do that, you are burning up that thought. You're burning up that karmic tendency that lives in your alaya. You're bringing it to awareness. You are not going into the dream. And if you do go into the dream, you come out of the dream. And every time you bring awareness to that process, you are burning up those karmic tendencies, that forward momentum that's going to produce more karma. If you see a dog and it bit you, before and you run away from it, you're just perpetuating the karma of that fear. That doesn't mean you have to go pet it or anything, but and so what they say in the scriptures, these karmic tendencies, Buddhism loves numerics, right? Helps you remember things. And so you can take this with a grain of salt, but they say that every time you are meditating and you see one of these habitual karmic patterns and you just see it without reacting, just see it and let it go. You are burning it up, and you burn it up in 81 grades, just for your amusement. And the grades are this: strong, strong, strong. That's the first one grade you burn up. The next one is strong, strong, medium. And the third one is strong, strong, weak. And then you burn up strong, medium, strong. You get it? And I don't know how they get to 81, but supposedly they're 81 grades. So you bring them to awareness, these karmic tendencies. And if we don't, we're doomed, destined to live them out. And they change, of course, as they come up and they're modified, just the way in that story with the dog. They're modified. They come up, they encounter new circumstances, and then they go back into the alaya modified. So we're living stories, these dreams of who we are and what our world is and what our lives have to be. And that's really the meaning of karma. Even this birth into a human body is part of that story, that karmic process. And when you, supposedly in the bardo, when you die, you go into this state between death and rebirth, and it's like a dream state. And eventually, your karma propels you into your next birth. And that karma, depending on what it is, will propel you into birth as a human being, as a god, as a hell being, as an animal, as a hungry ghost, as a jealous god, any one of those 6 realms. And these are really mental creations, stories that we're inhabiting. Okay.
John,
Yes, Jane.
yes, how are the teachings not based on beliefs? If there are no beliefs, then what are the teachings?
Well, I've just been giving you a whole bunch of them, and they're just useful ways to take things. And if you believe in them, and you take them to be beliefs and hold to them as beliefs, they get you in a lot of trouble because they're never perfect. They're just guidelines, useful ways, pointers. Pointers.
Okay.
Yeah, Buddhism eschews belief, dogma of any kind. And that's why there's no Buddhist version of the Bible or of the Quran, There's nothing like that. There are a lot of texts that people revere, and a lot of them conflict.
John?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Smith.
Is Jane finished?
Oh,
Yes, I am. I'm thinking. I'm thinking.
I know, I can see you.
I'm having thinking.
Yeah, it's a big thing to see because it's the primacy of experience. That all the words are just pointers to our experience. They are useful ways to take things, to describe the experience. In Tibetan, the Tibetan word for a word like this is like, it's like a label, like a tag. And so you could write the word table on a tag and tie it to the leg of a table. But the experience is real. The experience of that table, and it's an ellipse from where I sit, and it has a mottled wood tone to it, that you can never quite catch in words. I could say it's brown, but that doesn't begin to describe it accurately. Words are just tags, pointers, labels. This is a really profound question. And the experience is primary. That's where we live. Words, Gunther said it. He said, they're useful ways to take things. That's what's called relative truth. In Buddhism, there's the absolute truth and there's the relative truth. The absolute truth is indescribable because it's your experience as it arises and passes away in the present moment. And it's described in various ways like shunyata, mahamudra, all that stuff, egolessness, but those are just pointers. Just like the word table is a pointer to that table over there in the corner. How's that? It's a big difference from theistic religions.
In a lot of the, especially in chapter 3, I get the feeling that Trungpa feels a little competitive with religious practice, that he needs to point out the problems with those quote unquote beliefs. And it feels competitive to me. Like it really bothers him that there's all this religion happening. And these beliefs in God, like it really irks him.
I don't know if it really irked him, but he certainly spent some time talking about it. And you have to remember that when he was speaking in the 70s, we had this explosion of Hindu religiosity.
Right.
And, the kind of people you see at the airport, chanting Hare Rama, Hare Krishna and passing out incense.
Yeah.
Everywhere, And it was he attacked theism as another belief in God as an external being. And Buddhism just, Nagarjuna said, hold to no beliefs like that one. And then he said, and don't hold to that as a belief either. It's the primacy of experience.
Right.
Uh, Philip has a question.
Philip,
Can I bring you back to Alaya? I've always been confused about that. So like in Lojong, they talk about rest in the nature of Alaya, the essence. That's a different Alaya than what you're describing here.
it is. The word alaya is used in two very different contexts, but they're somewhat related. There is the alaya vijnana. Vijnana means storehouse, means consciousness. So alaya vijnana is the storehouse consciousness. It's the eighth consciousness. It's the seat of memory, and it's really the foundation almost of ego, because it gives you that feeling of that vague sense of I back there, which is the collection of all of your experiences and predilections that are inchoate. You know, they're unspoken. They reside back there, but they give you that feeling of me-ness, right? So that's the alaya vijnana. Now, the other meaning of alaya that you're referring to is it's just the alaya, and it's sometimes called the Dharma dhatu, and it refers to the space of phenomena, and it's another word for the absolute. So when you just see alaya, and when they talk about resting in the nature of alaya, actually that slogan is a little bit ambiguous, because you see, if you rest in the alaya vijnana, eventually it becomes the true alaya, the true awareness of this present moment.
So you've spoken a few times when you talk about the origin of ego, chogyam-trungpa talking about a little thing popping up out of the field.
Yeah, it's figurative, of course. Go ahead.
Right. So is that field, so to speak, is that alaya?
The true alaya, the absolute alaya, the alaya that is real. You can call, you know, it's an absolute. It's funny that they use the same word in these two different contexts. When they just talk about alaya, well, you have to get the context of what it, because if they say alaya vijnana, then it's the eighth consciousness, no question. But if they just say alaya, you have to see it in the context to know which one they're referring to, the absolute or the eighth consciousness.
Mm.
But the interesting thing is that teachers will say, if you go back and you rest your mind in the alaya vijnana, that's actually good meditation, and eventually it will lead to resting in the alaya itself, the pure alaya, which is nothing but this present moment, stripped of all concept.
And is pure alaya considered like the ninth level of consciousness?
No, pure alaya is beyond any levels of consciousness. It's reality. The levels of consciousness, the eight, all have to do with ego, with false belief in a self. They are different aspects of the belief in a self. They don't actually exist in any real way. They're just different aspects. It's like the old story of the wise men and the elephant. The blind man and the elephant. And one guy feels the legs and he says, oh, it's like a tree. And the other one feels the ear and he says, no, it's like a giant leaf. And another guy feels the trunk and says, it's like a big snake, you know? Well, the eight consciousnesses are all like that. They're all different aspects of ego.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. It's great. Just an endless collection of Dharma. Well, anybody else? We're getting late, I think. Yeah, 6:45, 8:45.
Peter?
Wait a minute, John. The woman with Kurt Steger had a question. Did she get to ask it?
Thank you, Tully. Meg, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, it was just going along with what Jane was saying about beliefs, and coming from an evangelical background, I'm really allergic to beliefs like heaven and hell. And it's hard for me to see beliefs or systems like reincarnation or karma. It's hard for me not to somehow, there's a good deal of belief or faith that's involved in that for me.
I have the same feeling. And for me, I wouldn't say I believe the sun's going to come up tomorrow, but I think it's pretty good chances of it, because of past experience and present experience. It's the same thing for me with a lot of these doctrines like reincarnation. And really what it takes is an explanation of what they mean. So for instance, the doctrine of rebirth. For instance, now, Buddhists prefer to use the term rebirth rather than reincarnation. Reincarnation has the idea that there is an eternal soul which moves from body to body, and it reincarnates, takes a new incarnation. Rebirth is happening every second, every instant. These words come out of my mouth, they die, and something else is born. This gesture dies, and a new one appears. The word comes out, it dies, and there's silence is born. There's a constant flow in the present moment of birth and death, and you can't even find what it is that was born and died because it's fluxing so continuously. This is the idea of rebirth. And I just wrote this up, actually. I'm writing a memoir, and I'm going to blog it. And I just wrote up this thing of death. Rinpoche explained all this in a seminar that I heard early on. And he just said, and physical death is just a grosser example, the grossest perhaps, of the death of these words, of this gesture. This body passes and it dies and something else is born, if it's just space even. And so a woman raised her hand in the Q&A after that talk. And I said in my writing, and she was probably younger then than I am now. I was 25. And she raised her hand and we could all hear what she was asking. She said, how do you know there's such a thing as rebirth? And what I heard is asking for reassurance, that death wasn't the end. And Rinpoche's answer has stayed with me all these years. And I think it's almost a koan. She said, how do you know there's such a thing as rebirth? And he said, because it's always now. It's always now. And it is. Have we ever known anything other than now? And in the now, it's just a constant streaming of change, which is death and rebirth. So, and in that same essay, I described one of Rinpoche's students committed suicide, a guy named Tom O'Leary. And I got the call from a friend of ours, a mutual friend, and he said, I think you better come down. I think Tom has killed himself. And I went down to Tom's apartment, and my friend Jim was there, and he let me in. He had let himself in, and he was sitting waiting for Tom to wake up, and finally he realized Tom wasn't waking up. And we saw him, and he was waxing. And I called up Rinpoche, and I was crying. And Rinpoche just said, stop it, like that. It's like, give up the emotionality. And I did. And a few days later, he gave a service, as it were. We all gathered out in a field in North Boulder. It was an empty field, big. You could throw it for miles. And it was in the middle of winter. It was cold, and the field was brown. And somebody lit a fire in an oil drum for warmth. And the sky was gray. And Rinpoche's first words were, just about now, Tom is discovering that he hasn't gotten out of anything. I have thought of that so many times over the years, when you think about suicide, the thought comes up that you're not going to get out of anything. It's just going to continue. The circumstances will change, body, all that, but the state of mind will continue on and changing just as it does in the present moment. Friends, anybody have something burning? I'm thinking it's getting late and we ought to end.
Last call.
Peter wants to say something. He's been raising his hand for a half hour.
Who's that?
Peter, unmute yourself. Peter.
Yes?
Peter, you're muted.
Is that Peter Goldfarb?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's always muted.
Peter, you're muted.
You're muted.
Or,
Okay, there you go.
not now. I have, it's interesting because I had two words in my mind and I heard you pronounce them, I think several times, which was the adjective to experience as absolute, or that's a noun, I guess. And it leaves me wondering, how can we be assured that our experience is absolute?
Well, I mean, we could call down that great judge in the sky.
Sure.
I think there's each one of us has to develop the certainty that your experience real. And that
Yeah.
is the best. You don't want it coming from an external source.
But is it then through our practice that it's just that the experience can, for me, or my idea of experience, it can so often be subject to questioning.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing. What our practice is all about is coming back into the awareness that we already have. We are born with it. It's here. It's only we lose track of it when we go off into thought. And the kind of thought that we go off into is always, always about self-doubt. Wishing things were otherwise, it's always self-doubt.
That's what I mean, yes.
And when that evaporates, self-doubt, that awareness is left, is here. And that's why the teachings say again and again, relax into the nature with which you were born. Relax into your fundamental awareness. So relax into it. You give up the effort. The effort is always connected with doubt, self-doubt. Things are not as they should be. And you let that go, and it's here. And at some point, we begin to acknowledge that more and more.
I see. Wonderful.
We'll talk about the path more and how that happens.
Okay.
There's a schema for that, actually.
Very curious.
Very well.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody, the assignment for next week is chapters 5 and 6, 2 chapters. And you can stay tuned. I'll send out an email to remind you of that. And also, we're going to have an email going out about refuge vows and perhaps about the sadhana of Mahamudra. Okay.
And is anything, John, going out about it's taking refuge? What is that? How does one know about that or learn about what that is?
What we'll do is, I'm going to recommend some readings.
Okay.
You can take a look at them. If you like the look of it, we'll do a class on those readings, maybe more. And at any time, you can bail. This is not about joining a club, the Buddhist club, or getting an identity. Like, now I'm saved.
Okay, that really interests me very much.
Great. And I'm going to ask you all, if you are interested in, please put your email in chat. That'll give me an idea, and I'll make a list.
Okay.
Where is chat?
Chat is somewhere on your screen. It's a little picture of it. It's like a voice bubble, and it's got the word chat under it. Yes?
So this meeting is recorded, right? Where how can I access it in the future if I want to like play back and listen again?
I'm going to send out the link in an email with next week's readings. It's also available on our Facebook page, which is called it's called the Path-of-Awakening-Buddhist-Center. And on that page, you can click on it. It's in YouTube, but I'll send out the YouTube link to you.
Do you have Ricky's email?
I don't know. Ricky, put it in chat.
Yeah, I put it. Yeah, it's right there. I got it.
Okay.
What were those two chapters, John?
Chapters 5 and 6.
5 and 6. Thank you.
Is
Okay,
the
well,
book? Do you know if the book is available digitally?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know if the book is available digitally?
Is it's available? What's the last word?
Digitally.
Digitally.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is. Absolutely, yes. I'm pretty sure you can buy it digitally.
Well, I don't think, yeah, not as a, I don't know if it's available as a PDF. Maybe someplace you can get it as a like Kindle version, I think, which you can then of course play back anywhere.
You can definitely get it on Kindle because I have a copy of it on Kindle. And it's just about as good as a PDF. I mean, you can highlight, you can do so much with Kindle. So it's definitely available digitally.
Thank you, Telly. All right. Can we close with the dedication of merit?
Good idea.
We can.
Thank you. This is a Buddhist practice by which you dedicate, you give away the merit, if I can find it here, for the benefit of all sentient beings. And you might be worried that you're not going to get the merit yourself